in your own life, to what extent do you value following the law of karma and its results? Is that something important to you? Or to put it another way, to what extent do you value living an ethical life, and how much attention do you pay to doing that? Or to put it in an even simpler way, to what extent do you want to live a life of non-harm? And to what, how much do you pay attention to that in your own life? And when push comes to shove in your life, when there's a choice between your ethical principles and getting what you want, or expressing your unhappiness about something, which side do you go on? Do your ethical values, your belief in karma, get compromised by the force of attachment or anger? In other words, we say we believe in karma and its effects. We say we want to live a life of non-harm. But when our own immediate happiness is at stake, even small things of happiness, to what extent do we follow our values, and to what extent does attachment and anger dominate our thoughts and our actions? And so what ideas do you have for internal and external circumstances that will support you to live according to your values and your precepts without compromising them when there's the opportunity for some immediate pleasure or to get our revenge or whatever? So what external circumstances can you put yourself in, or people that you can hang out with that will support you in doing this? And what internal things in your own mind, what understandings or beliefs or values do you need to reinforce through your study and meditation practice? And how can you go about doing this? So we've talked about the power of regret and differentiating that from guilt, and how important it is to be able to own things and admit them and have regret for them, but without beating ourselves up. Because beating ourselves up is completely counter to the effect that we want to have. Okay? And we've talked a lot about repairing the relationship, especially in terms of sentient beings, and really changing how we feel about different sentient beings so that our mind is, more open and receptive to them. We haven't talked so much about repairing our relationship with the three jewels, but that one's important. We'll see, maybe we'll come back to that. But now we're getting into the third of the four powers, making a determination not to do it again. Okay? And so, this usually comes, well, it does come at the end of the Vajrasattva practice. When you do the 35 Buddhas, you do the prostrations and recite the Buddha's name. And then after that, you do the confession. And, there's a short sentence in there about not doing it again. But this is actually a very important point in the purification practice. And it's one that really involves some self-honesty. Because there's some things that we've done that we honestly say, I will never, ever do them again. Things that we may regret. And we may, for a while, be able to repair the relationship with the person. But can we really say we're never going to do it again? For example, talking behind people's backs. Do you regret that? Somewhat. But sometimes talking behind people's back is really good. It lets me blow off steam. I have a release from it. Then other people give me good information about the other person, and they can, give me ideas about what to do. Sometimes they even side with me in a conflict. I like that. So, yeah, it's not so good to talk negatively behind other people's back, but yeah, and I kind of want to stop doing it. But, okay, you getting what I'm saying? So, so to what extent can we really say, I will never talk behind anybody's back again? Can we even truthfully say, I don't want to ever talk behind anybody's back again? Except that. It was like the first time I took the 5 precepts. I took all 5, but they all had exceptions to them. Yeah? I'll keep this precept except in this situation, and I'll keep that precept except, in that situation, and so on. Yeah, that was my first experience with the 5 precepts. That has changed since then, but, there's still some work to be done. Okay, so I think it's very helpful to look at especially some of our habitual negative actions, and do we really want to stop them? Yeah. And this relates to the meditation that we just did at the beginning, because I think at the beginning, if we say, oh, do you believe in karma and its effects, and do you want to live by that? Then everybody wants to be a good Buddhist. We all say resoundingly, yes. Okay? I believe in karma. I want to live like that. But, you see, this is that 3-letter word, but. Yeah? It's a very important word in our language, But do I act like I really believe in karma? Yeah. Do I monitor my mind and my speech and my physical actions as if I really believed that they have an ethical dimension and I will experience the result of that? Yeah. Do I really think about, the causes I'm creating in my actions? Do I really think about the effects, not just immediate effects, long-term effects of what I say and do and think? Okay? So it's very easy to say, oh yes, I believe in karma. Oh yes, I think living ethically is important. But how much does that wise mouth influence our actual behavior? And the topic of some of the scandals has come up, and maybe this is the missing link for some of those people who, teach ethical conduct, but don't quite believe that it applies to them. Yeah. We all are like to point at Trump and say he thinks that he's beyond the law. That he can go in the middle of Times Square and shoot somebody and nothing's going to happen. And he lives his life like that. Yeah. So we look and say, but if you ask him, he'll probably say, oh, I want to keep a good ethical life. Yeah. But he has a lot of buts in it. And it's easy for us to point out his buts. Yeah. But we need to point out our own, In what areas do we say, yeah, oh yeah, I don't want to bad rap anybody behind their back. Unless I'm really frustrated and I feel all isolated and alone in this conflict and I really want somebody else on my side. Yeah. Or I don't want to speak in a way that causes harm to anybody. But sometimes they deserve it and they need it. Yeah. And a little bit of hurt feelings isn't bad. After all, look what they did to me. Maybe this will help them wise up. Yeah. Or lying is bad. This is actually one of the things that got me into robes as I started looking at my double standard, I was looking, lying is bad. Politicians, people in the business world, all these people lying right, left, and center. Lying is horrible. I don't want to lie. Except when I don't want my parents to know about what I'm doing. Yeah. Then lying is okay. Because if my parents really knew what I was doing, they would explode. And who wants to face a family crisis? Yeah. So, all these ways in which we kind of negotiate. Mm-hmm. But as I always point out, when it comes to making a vow never to speak to somebody again, we never renegotiate that one. Yeah. I hate you so much, I am never going to speak to you again. That's it. I never break that vow. Yeah. So somehow something's amiss. Something's upside down here. Okay? And so that's why it's important, when we come to this power of making a determination to avoid the action again, to really be quite honest with ourselves and see where our own belief in karma and our own belief in ethics and our own value of non-harmfulness, how strong it is in difficult situations. Yeah. And this is very touchy and it's very difficult because we all like to think of ourselves as good people, and yet, So if we're really committed to working on ourselves, which I'm assuming that we all are, otherwise you'd be in Times Square today instead of here. If we're really committed to that, then we have to ask ourselves, okay, if I'm weak in some areas of my ethical conduct and my belief in karma and its effects, then what are the external and internal circumstances that will support me in growing in the direction that I want to, so that there's more accord between what I say and what I actually feel and do when push comes to shove. Okay? So external circumstances, one thing is, hang out around people who share your values and don't hang out around people who don't share your values. Okay? And this is one of the challenging things for many people when they get into the Dharma, because we all have all of our old friends, and when we think about what we did with all of our old friends, and now we have new values, and how are we going to get along and with those old friends and do what we used to do with them? And then it becomes a little bit uncomfortable, because they're my friends. If I give them up, then what? Who will I be friends with? Am I kind of out there on my own and nobody's supporting me, and they're all gonna call me prudes? Like if I really give up drinking and drugging, if I really do, then wow, what's going to happen when I go to a family dinner and they're all drinking wine and I say I don't want to drink wine? Are they all going to look at me like, you're a Buddhist? Who do you think you think you're morally superior to the rest of this family? Kiddo, you got another thing coming. Yeah, you used to drink like a whale or whatever. Fish. Fish is too small. A whale is better. Yeah. Yeah, you used to drink like a whale. And now you're sitting here with your nose in the air. You think you're so good. Are we afraid of that? And is that, even if we're afraid of it, is that really going to happen? And if it really happens, is it the end of the world? Is it the end of the world? Is the whole family dinner going to be ruined because I don't have a glass of wine? Well, yes, it will. Okay? Or, with old friends, similarly with intoxicants. So many of our social relationships revolve around intoxicants, don't they? You're drinking or doping or, whatever you're doing. And that's what you do with your friends. And well, if I don't do that anymore, what are my friends going to say? You're so prudish. I mean, look at even the Buddha's friends. When he was doing those 6 years of extreme asceticism with his 5 friends, and he decided that wasn't the path, and he left, all of his friends said, you softy, you flake, you're giving up these ascetic practices because you want to go eat a bowl of rice with raisins in it. You're giving up your whole practice for something stupid. Yeah. But the Buddha did it anyway, even though his old friends, made fun of him and disowned him and kicked him out. Mm-hmm. And then he was the one who wound up teaching them the Dharma. and they were his first disciples. Okay. Yeah. So it's very interesting to explore what we think will happen with our old friends if we change, and really look at the attachment in there. And then also to think about so that's one thing. Second thing is to think about what qualities do I really value in friendships? Yeah. When I am becoming friends with people, what qualities attract me to those people? What kind of people do I want to hang with? Yeah. And it's very interesting to really ask ourselves that question. And we may find that, we're not really hanging out with the kind of people we want to hang out with. Or maybe we want to hang out with them, but they aren't a very good force in our life. Yeah. My mother had this thing. I quote my mother often. I will get around to writing that book. Expressions of my mother. Yeah. Maybe your mother said it too. Birds of a feather flock together. Yeah. Well, Mom was right on that one. Yeah. That we become like the people we hang out with. And so it's so important to look at who we hang out with and what are those people doing and how do they act and how do they speak and what do they think about and what are their values. Because when we stay with them, we're going to become like them. Yeah? And this happens, I think, too, in looking for Buddhist groups where you feel at home. Look at the way the other disciples are acting and say, not that disciples are perfect, that we're not, okay? But how are they acting? And do you want to become like them? Yeah, because there are, for example, some groups that drink and drug. Yeah, and is that an atmosphere that's good for you in your spiritual practice? I know for me, given my afflictions and the areas in which I had very strong afflictions, that I needed a certain kind of teacher and a certain kind of group in order to progress. Yeah, and drinking and drugging and sexual affairs were not included in the qualities of the teacher or the group, because I needed to clean up my life. Okay, so it's quite interesting to think about this, and this is just on the external level. What environment do I need to put myself in so that I can live in a way with integrity, where I feel good about my actions? And what environments do I put myself in where I compromise my values? Now, this can sometimes be very challenging in relating to our families. Yeah. My family, completely unreligious, yeah, even in their own faith, unreligious. And I often wonder why I was born in that family. And, because I'm quite different than the rest of the people. I think I had a good upbringing, and I received a lot of love. But I had to look at my family and say, they're great people, they're kind people, but there's certain areas where I do not want to be like them. Yeah. But to learn, because they are my family, how to be with them and not have conflict all the time. Yeah, over different values. So one of my techniques was when I went to visit, I didn't stay more than 2 or 3 days. Yeah. My mother also had a saying that guests are like fish. They smell after 3 days. Or they get rotten after 3 days, or, something like that. Yeah? So, okay, Mom, that includes me too. Yeah, and I will happily do that because I noticed that 3-day visits went very well because all they basically wanted to know is how I am and see me and have a few meals, and that was good enough, you know? And so while I was there, yes, I watched television. Yeah, normally I don't. Why did I watch television when I visit my parents? Because if you didn't watch television, there was no other time to talk to them. Because the television was on morning to evening. They were retired by that time, morning to evening. So if I wanted to talk to them and be with them, I had to watch the television and then tell them to mute it during the commercials. And then we would talk during the commercials. And then when the program came on again, they would watch the program. Okay? And that worked well. I had to be flexible. I couldn't say turn off the TV altogether. Although once in a while I did succeed in doing that. Okay. So it was kind of short and sweet visits, and it worked very, very well. Okay. So to think, how do I navigate my external life, and who inspires me in my practice that I want to be around? What environment inspires me to practice and to to really keep my values. Yeah? And so, like I said, it can be difficult at the beginning of our practice as we look at our family and our old friends and we make some decisions about it. Okay. So with old friends, it doesn't mean that you go, ugh! You're just a dopehead. I mean, you're friendly, you're pleasant. Yeah. We have to be friendly and pleasant in society, even with people who have different values than we do, whether we know them or not. And so here in our community, there's a Canadian company that wants to build a silicon smelter. And there's a lot of us who are opposed to it. And so we're meeting together with other people in the community who are not the people that we would usually be friends with, but who similarly, like us, have the same value of respecting nature and not wanting, a smelter a mile from downtown Newport. Okay? So, to expand the people we relate to in a compassionate, friendly way, while at the same time really choosing our friends and the people who we're very close to and the people who we confide in, choosing those people very carefully, because they will influence us a lot. Making some sense? Yeah. Okay. We can't go isolate ourselves from the rest of the world. Sometimes we come to Buddhism and we think, especially Tibetan Buddhism, you go up, you're like, the ideal is become like Milarepa. Okay, so where are those nettles? Well, we'll leave behind the nettles. I want a nice meal, but I want to go live in a cave, you know, with a stove and a refrigerator and a soft bed, and, you know. But I want to go live in a cave like Milarepa, yeah, and be away from all these obnoxious people who are driving me crazy. Yeah. We can never get away from other living beings. We always live in relationship to other living beings. Even you move to the moon, I'm sure there's living beings on the moon. Yeah. They may not look like us. We may not be able to see them with their eyes. But why do we think that in this universe we're the only place with living beings? Yeah, this universe is pretty big. You think this is the only place? Really? So, and I think, they're always looking for water on other places, that will indicate that there's life there. I'm sure that due to karma, there's many living beings that don't need water to stay alive and don't need oxygen to stay alive. And they're somewhere in this universe. So, and we may even be born there next lifetime. So, but what I'm getting at is we can never get away from other living beings. So in our practice, let's not have this thing of, I'm going up to the mountains. Oh, I'm going to be alone, the lone yogi with my television and my phone. And I want to have enough bandwidth to do some Skype and watch movies. Okay, we're never apart from other sentient beings, so we have to learn how to be friendly and kind and relate to them in a peaceful, pleasant way. Yeah, but it's just a thing of choosing what environments are best for us. Okay. In terms of, so that's one external thing. In another thing to really look out for is our relationship with the media. Yeah. And what things do we read? What things do we listen to? Because that is really going to shape us too. Okay? What kind of movies do you watch? Someone's rolling their eyes. Yeah. I mean, are you hooked on movies with lots of sex and violence, which are what most movies have? Yeah. What kind of, if you listen to the radio in your car, what do you listen to? What do we read? Are we reading, romantic novels or sci-fi, books, or, and especially on the internet, my goodness, you could go listen to anything nowadays. Do we go to some of those sites on the, what do they call it? The dark internet? The dark web, yeah. Where you can buy guns and sell prostitutes and, are we hanging out on there somewhere? So, and do we read all the billboards? Do we learn all the jingles? Yeah? Yeah. Do you remember some of the jingles from when you were a kid? Those things they get planted in your mind, don't they? Yeah. One of we had one nun here for EML one year, and she had done a 3-year retreat, and she was telling us that, when you're in 3-year retreat, everything comes up. And she was saying that she was chanting, the ants go marching one by one. Remember that one? Yeah. Or, Yeah, I'm sure. I just remember, Mickey Mouse, Mickey Mouse. Yeah, see, everybody, you can join me. Okay, did you have Mickey Mouse in Singapore? Yeah, did you have it in Germany?
Whoa.
Oh. In Vietnam? Russia?
Yeah, but we have DuckTales.
What?
DuckTales.
DuckTales. What are DuckTales? Oh,
The Duck family.
we had Donald Duck too. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, Donald Duck and Mickey Mouse were.
It was his nephews.
Yeah.
Donald Duck's nephews became a whole nother.
Oh, really? Oh, Donald Duck didn't have nieces too?
Oh no, rascal nephews.
Uh-oh.
She didn't play a huge role.
She was wearing pink.
Oh, gender bias, my goodness. Even with Donald Duck. Okay, so, to look at how we relate to the media. Do we know all the latest songs and the pop culture and the lyrics to rap? Okay, how do these things influence us? What do they make us think about? How do they affect our values? How do they affect our actions? Yeah, video games. Yeah, do you play video games? What do they do to your mind? Where you're shooting people, one after the other in a video game. Okay, so to really look at how we relate to the media and to the culture around us, and how to really do some analysis and some observation in our own mind about how this influences us. And the news, yeah? How do we listen to the news, and how does the news influence us? Because you can listen to the news like it is a long-rim textbook. That's one way with the news. And boy, is it a good, you are on that chapter with karma for a long time. Yeah, when you pay attention to the news. Or do we listen to the news and we get angry? And we get full of despair? Okay. So how are these things affecting us? And if they aren't affecting us in a good way, then we need to see, what other kind of outside things are going to help us keep our values strong. Okay. So we need to learn about the rest of the world. I think documentaries are excellent for that. Yeah. But to really watch how things are presented, because the media today is really, it's based on getting you to have some strong emotion every few minutes. Because if it doesn't produce some strong emotion, then we get bored and we turn it off, and then the advertisers don't like that. So, they have to present things in a way so that we stay plugged in, or addicted, depends how you want to say. Okay, so to look at things like that in our life. Then internal, so those are looking at some of the external factors, and how we need to structure, what we let influence us. And also how we let things influence us, because some things we clearly can't ignore or escape from, but how do they influence us? And then internally, Okay. What if we really believe in karma and we want to make our view in karma firmer so that we can, when we say, I will never do that again, or I won't do it again for the next 2 days, or whatever we promise, to make it so that we can keep it, what internal things do we need to emphasize in our practice? What internal qualities, yeah, do we need to reinforce inside of ourselves? Yeah. So, what qualities do you think would be helpful to reinforce inside of yourself, so to make this third element of the four opponent powers more truthful and stronger for you?
Discipline. I mean, I struggle with that. I want to go off the rails all the time for just a little while.
Okay. And so, what could you do in your practice to increase your discipline?
Well,
What could you contemplate in your meditation, maybe, that would invigorate your wish to keep good discipline?
maybe the outcome of, well, if I can do that discipline, then I get the benefit of learning more. I've opened up to learn more. I've got so.
Okay, so contemplating the benefits.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a technique the Buddha uses a lot in the teachings. Yeah, contemplate the benefits of having the quality that you want to develop. Okay. Scott, you had something? Or somebody?
I was just going to say humility, but it occurred to me that you develop humility by having discipline. So her answer is better.
Yeah. But just looking at the humility, what things would help you have humility?
Recognition of the benefits of having a strong, genuine practice. The benefits, like you said. So all my answers aren't nearly as good as yours or hers.
Another thing that I find very helpful for humility is contemplating the kindness of others and realizing that everything I know, or whatever quality I'm feeling arrogant about, actually I have because somebody else taught me or somebody else encouraged me. So that lessens the arrogance. Yeah, and helps me feel more connected to other people.
Okay, I'll try.
Yeah. Naomi, did you have something?
I was just going to say, I think self-awareness and self-honesty is incredibly important as a foundation, because if you're not acknowledging the issues you're having, then you're not going to fix them.
Yeah. And so how can you increase your self-honesty and self-awareness?
I think the conversation or the topic of identity that you brought up yesterday, really contemplating how, we aren't a solid fixed thing. It's okay to have made mistakes or to have habit that's very strong, that's not positive. I think that we tend to go into guilt mode. You don't want to acknowledge what you did because it makes you feel bad as a human being, like separating out the guilt, contemplating, how we are able to change and being okay with that. And so I guess impermanence would be the one-word answer.
Yeah. No, or just the four opponent powers, what you said, but doing them in the way that are really healthy for you.
Applying the antidote to the affliction that caused the behavior, and maybe making even a practice commitment that you'll do that for a particular period of time.
Okay. Yeah. So really, because lots of times we'll see the behavior, we'll see the affliction behind it, and then we won't do anything about it. Yeah. And so you're saying to make a practice commitment for a certain period of time that you can keep to really apply the antidote to that particular affliction. Yeah, that's good. Uh-huh.
Cultivating a stronger sense of integrity.
Mm-hmm.
I think particularly by like contemplating the disadvantages of going against my values, like how the inner conflict that comes up or the ramifications of acting in unethical ways, and so using that as a motivation to maintain that sense of integrity and act it out.
Yeah. And how lousy we feel when we go against our own values and don't respect our own integrity.
Seeing the other as self. I find that it really helps me protect, to create negative karma, to do negative actions out of self-cherishing.
To counteract.
It prevents, by seeing the other as self.
Uh-huh.
Then immediately I want to refrain from hurting or harming them immediately, and that helps protect me.
Right. Yeah. So really seeing others as living beings with feelings. And cherishing them in the same way that you would cherish yourself or take care of yourself.
Yeah. I don't know if it's right, but when I just said they're me, it really gives me a strong sense of I don't want to do that. Yeah, like they're encompassed in me.
Yeah.
For lack of a better phrase, I think reinforcing even small successes. For example, I caught myself early and this morning in constructing a story that included some anger, but I actually caught myself and went, oh, and then I felt kind of happy about that.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, okay. And then I let it go. But
yeah. Okay. So stopping the stories. If you notice them, you have to notice them first. Yeah.
Increasing introspective awareness, so that I can tell when the affliction is coming, and when the response is going to follow, and then be able to short circuit that whole process.
And so, how can you increase your introspective awareness?
Slowing down, and sort of noticing what I'm doing and what I'm saying, and being connected with how my body's reacting to things, because usually when I'm triggered, I can feel things in my body. It's like, oh, okay, this is familiar, something is coming, and then kind of sort of stopping and seeing what is it that's coming and why, and then not react to it. So that whole chain of events that results in a big explosion or implosion, mostly in my case, then I can short circuit that.
Okay. So just checking in with your body and mind more often. Yeah. Okay. And Vajrasattva, yeah.
I think for me, one very helpful thing is having a useful metaphor or a saying that reminds me of values. Like with humility, for example, recalling that story about the bowl that is already full, or that saying about the grass that doesn't grow on the high hills, just immediately brings my mind to that quality. And with karma in general, just thinking about the will of sharp weapons, even without rereading the text, just remembering the boomerang effect immediately makes me think, well, what will I have coming back to me from that?
Yeah. Yeah. So analogies really work well for you. Yeah.
On remembering key phrases, since Geshe Sopa told us cowboy up, cowgirl up, I changed that a little bit to saddle up, because that's what I remember from my childhood. So I'm trying to grow in fortitude. So when I leave the house and I know I'm going to be doing a series of things where I'm apt to become irritated, because I become irritated in lines quite far too easily, I sort of say, okay, time for fortitude, and I'm going to saddle up. and it really keeps my fortitude stronger.
Mhm.
And then if it diminishes, I think about the advantages of strengthening it.
Yeah.
And then I think saddle up again. And I just always kind of see him saying that. And I think having a little key phrase for me has been really helpful. And actually, it has also worked. I'm far more patient with things that are little tiny triggers in mine.
Yeah.
So I saddle up.
Yeah. It made me think that certain phrases of some of my teachers really helped me in some difficult situations. One of my teachers used to say, Lama used to say, "Keep it simple, dear." And it's like, yeah, because when my mind's making a story, I'm making all sorts of complexities. And it's just keep it simple.
Yeah, I use saddle up for that too. Sometimes I know what's coming in the next day. It's very easy. Of course, I'd like to sit in bed with the kitties and a book, but I have to be going, contractors coming, something, And there's a part of my mind that's like, oh, this is going to be too hard. This is such a long, hard day. But I have that sign posted in my kitchen. I see it right away that says saddle up. So I just go, well, I guess I'm going to have to saddle up. And that actually can get me through the day without that. And it's amazing how often my bones don't hurt when I saddle up, So a phrase works.
Yeah, good. Okay. So, yeah. Yeah, so the two of you in the back corner. And then that'll be all for this session.
So I have a very, very negative mind, and one of my teachers was like, well, you need to rejoice. And I was like, I have nothing to rejoice about. So, so he was like, too bad, so sad, you got to do it. So I started rejoicing, and it was very grudging. And now it takes up a lot of the space in my mind that used to be devoted and, all to negativity. And so now I rejoice at like even stupid teeny things, and it really feels good. At first it was very difficult, but now it's like, I rejoice that you found your cup. I rejoice, and it's definitely lightened my mind. And if nothing else, it takes up some of the space that was devoted to negativity. So.
The one thing that I've really been working on and actually have learned by spending time here is actually slowing down enough to set an intention and not just blindly or habitually moving into situations that if I stop for a minute, I know that maybe I might have a problem in them. And so actually just taking a breath and just setting an intention of what my hope is or what what I hope will happen has actually made a huge difference in those kinds of things.
Yeah. And this is the value of setting an intention when we first wake up in the morning. So I really recommend, setting the intention today. I'm not going to harm as much as possible. I'm going to benefit others as much as possible. And I'm going to increase my bodhicitta as much as I can. And you set that intention, and then throughout the day, you come back to it, So you can have your phone ping at different times, and that is your reminder of come back to my intention. Yeah. And like you said too, if you know that you're going to be having, meeting with somebody who knows how to push your buttons, or there's going to be some difficult negotiations or whatever, to really set your intention before going in the situation of how you want to act and think during it. Yeah. So instead of, being prepared, like I know that person is going to attack me, and so I'm going to get all revved up so I can give them the old one too. is, okay, this person may have a tendency to say things that push my buttons, and my buttons are my responsibility. And so here's how I need to think if my buttons are pushed so that I can stay smooth. Okay, let's dedicate.